So let's take a look at our agenda for today. So this is a purposely short webinar. We take about 20 or 30 minutes to cover the topics, and these are the specific topics we'll be talking about. First, sort of the state of product development today, and specifically the recent challenges that companies have been facing in product development, and some discussion about, some of our experiences and how we've helped companies face these challenges. And we're going to be doing that in an interesting way. We're going to be doing that by actually showing a couple of case studies of clients that we've worked with over the last year meet two different types of product development challenges. So that's where we'll be focusing on that. And then at the end, there will be some time for some Q&A, that we often have. And to do that, you would use the chat feature on the left-hand or right-hand panel of your screen. You will see a questions or chat area. Just simply send that to the organizer. Our boys Aaron here will be checking those, and we'll cover those at the end of our session. All right, so Jay, we've had a huge response to this webinar. We have a lot of people online today. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts as to why this is such a hot topic?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. No, it really is. It's been remarkable how many people signed up, and it's remarkable how many people signed up from around the globe. Mm-hmm. In the past, most of our webinars have really been about value-based pricing concepts and frameworks. And after our last webinar in December, a number of customers and prospects came to us and said, hey, show us how the application actually works. Mm-hmm. And I think that may be part of the reason why people are interested, is they want to actually see how product development folks are using our application. But the other piece is, the past 2 years have been really painful for any of us who've been in the B2B marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just been painful. It's been a challenge market. And it's affected all of us if we're trying to get access to capital, if we're trying to get predictable revenue flows, if we're trying to penetrate a marketplace, or if we're even trying to capture market share. It's been extremely challenging. And one of the things that makes Ed and I excited about what we see in 2011 going forward is that we really see the marketplace changing. And touch wood, it will. And it's not just because of what Obama said last night, that the economy is coming back. What we're really seeing is a renewed focus in new products. And for us, that renewed focus in new products is part of what's driving the interest in this. But it's also a demonstration of that the marketplace is coming back. Mm-hmm. Because it's really clear that new products drive sales. Mm-hmm. Customers want to buy new products, they want to get the advantages that new products deliver, and salespeople can get excited about it, and it can drive enthusiasm into the marketplace. Mm-hmm. New products are a good investment. The return on investment from a new product, when it's successful, is really powerful. And new products help you start to capture market share. It's pretty clearly evident, and you can see the research that we have on the page here that came from a study that the PADM did, Product Development Marketing Group. The key element here is around creating a successful new product. The profitable growth comes from a successful new product. And my belief is that a number of our customers are coming to us around new product development right now because they see what our application provides to them, giving them clear insight into how to make a successful new product introduction.
So let's take a look at the state of product development today. So one of the things that, in looking at some of the research, and there's a great study by Booz & Company about global innovation, is that it's still a significant investment by a lot of companies. So the last year was available, over $500 billion was spent on product development, and it drove, I don't know, about $15 trillion of revenue. But as you point out, Jay, I mean, the recent couple of years have been really, really tough for a lot of companies. And in fact, last year, or 2009, was the first year there was actually a drop overall in new product development. Now, that did vary by region, and it did vary by industry. For example, high tech and medical devices continues to spend a lot on R&D, but a lot of industrial companies in the automotive industry has really cut back on that. especially in the United States and in Europe, although, interestingly enough, Asia still is going very strong with R&D.
Well, I mean, I think the kind of the case example that we'd like to use is the recent announcement by General Motors around promoting a new SVP of product development. Her name's Mary Barara. It was really interesting. It wasn't just that they promoted a new SVP of product development. It was what the CEO said around it. And the CEO said, we're a year behind in product development. Mm-hmm. We need to do more with less. We're only releasing or unveiling one new product at the Detroit Auto Show.
Right.
Now, I think that may be an extreme example, but that pressure is something that we're seeing from a lot of our customers in the product development area. We've got to do more with less. We've got to be sure that we're successful. And by the way, our budgets are being cut or being tightly controlled and monitored. So how do we get growth when we're experiencing that kind of pressure?
And a lot of companies do control the process by using some form of product development process. Stagegate is very commonly used. A lot of companies use Stagegate process. But what's really also interesting is research is saying where the focus of that new product development is. Many companies are simply putting a lot of their effort in Stagegate around extending the life of existing products or reformulating products for different markets or adding some additional features. In other words, not a lot in brand new products, but in extending the life cycle. And interestingly enough, we have two examples of both sides of the product development, which we'll get into a little bit later.
Yeah, and just to build off of that one point, Ed, I think what's also important is it's not good enough just to have a process. Mm-hmm. It's about the outcome of the process. And the outcome of the process needs to be a successful new product. And I think before the recent downturn, the Stagegate process was something that people walked through because they had to. Mm-hmm. Now they're walking through it and really trying to be sure each stage and each gate is actually an improvement on quality.
Right.
And I think the content that we provide helps improve that overall process.
So the big question is what's going to happen this year? That is really the big question. And this is a great opportunity to put out our first polling question, which is, looking at your company's R&D budget in 2011, will it be the same as last year, modest increase, significant increase, modest decrease, or a significant decrease? So one of those 5 choices, the polling question is being pushed out right now. Please take a minute and choose one of those. And while that is happening, this is my favorite part of the webinars where I ask Jay to make a prediction.
And the reason he asks me to do that is because I'm always wrong with my prediction, and then he can make fun of me for the next month until the next webinar comes up. What I am seeing right now in the marketplace, for the most part, is a modest decrease in R&D spending. The difference, though, however, is that we are seeing is that there is actually a budget being set aside for R&D. Mm-hmm. 2 years ago, very frequently we would walk into an organization and there was no budget laid out for R&D, and it was going to kind of based on what we see happening. Mm-hmm. But what I do believe in 2011, we're going to see a modest decrease in R&D spending, not a significant decrease.
All right. Well, let's see what the audience is saying. Are we ready? Aaron?
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Okay, and the results are, well, it's across the board here, as you can see. 25% is staying the same, 25% increase modestly, 20 significantly, and 30 decrease. So it's really across the board. That's really interesting. That's really interesting.
I do want to draw Ed's attention that 30% said decrease modestly, which was my prediction. So.
Okay.
But no one said decrease significantly.
No one did, and that's a great thing. And again, this does vary by region and industry, but I think overall it looks very, very positive. Well, let's do another question, and this results into what the focus will be for next year. And here we have 4 choices. One is totally new products, so brand new innovations. B, variations of existing products. C, a balance of both. Or D, other. And other can be a whole lot of things, from pure research to investing in processes, etc. So please, if you could check one of those 4, be curious to see what our audience is predicting. So Jay, you did pretty well on that last question.
I
what
got
do you
one
think?
right
Yeah,
finally.
Yeah.
Well, seriously, a lot of this depends on what industry you're in.
Right.
But what I do feel like is a lot of what we're looking right now is product extensions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's variations of existing products.
Yeah.
And from a value perspective, that creates a real challenge because a customer already has a perception of what is the value of the existing product. So if you're making a variation on a theme, it creates some real interesting challenges.
Yeah, and the other thing that I've seen is that even product and marketing managers sort of make the same assumptions about what the market may have totally changed, and that's another thing that we see as well. So let me just look at our colleague and see, are we ready to push out? Okay, so the results are, wow, again, a mix between new products and balanced products. Wow, that's really interesting. And variations of existing products, 9%. So a lot of good innovation out there.
Yeah, and that's exciting, and I'm glad we have both examples that we brought into the webinar so we can talk about the new product example, kind of the bet the farm example.
Right, exactly. All righty. So moving on to the next slide.
Yeah, so while we're optimistically talking about how the change is occurring in 2011 and how we're seeing this great focus on new products, the reality around new product is that very few of them actually hit their volume goals. Mm-hmm. Very few of them actually hit their profit goals, which means that most new products really aren't a success. Mm-hmm. So the question is, what are customers asking for from Leverage Point? Mm-hmm. And one of the first pieces that we see is that customers are trying to drive efficiency in the process. And by driving efficiency, what I'm really talking about is they're trying to determine how do they make the trade-off decisions. Should we continue to invest in a piece of functionality? Right. Should we continue to invest in a feature? Or is that feature not going to drive a lot of value for our customers? Mm-hmm. And so the next question, logical question that would follow on that is, how do we determine the value, not just of a new offer, but how do we determine the value of specific features and functions within a new offer? And how do we capture that? And what tends to come out is a whole set of questions about how do we determine value across different segments? Because different groups of customers get different value from our offer. And how do we start to map that? And then there's a set of questions about, is it better to handle this as a new offer, brand new, or should we really be handling this as an extension of an existing offer? Right. So a lot of you talked about this balance of an existing offer, existing extensions, and new offers. And we see a lot of organizations wrestling with that piece. Clearly, because we are the only application that focuses around value-based pricing, a lot of our customers are also asking, how do we set a value-based price? And in B2B markets, it's not good enough just to set a price. It's how do you capture it with a customer? Right. But ultimately what we see is that customers are saying, we want to balance control versus creativity. We want our product development folks to remain creative, mm-hmm. looking at ways of driving significant value for our customers. We want to encourage that, but we also want the control in order to be able to capture that in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And those are the types of questions that our customers are asking right now.
And those are a lot of the challenges. So what sort of advice are we giving them, Jay?
Yeah, so when we think about a value-based approach to this, mm-hmm. clearly you need to understand what is the value that your offer is delivering to a customer. Right. Now the challenge is with a net new offer or an extension of an offer, a lot of the time we don't know what that value is. Right. So we really need to bring a number of different constituents across the enterprise together to come up with a common understanding about what that value is. Mm-hmm. And calling it an understanding may be too extreme. A hypothesis about where do we think the value is. Right. And a hypothesis about where do we think the value of a specific feature or function is. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're coming up with that hypothesis, at some point in time, you need to be able to test it with a customer. So you have to now take that concept, that hypothesis about where the value is, and test it with customers. and put it in a framework that a customer can understand. And ultimately, you need to have the ability to dynamically model the value proposition of your offering. So as you're making those trade-off decisions, you can make them based on where you see value driving. But I think truthfully, Ed, I think I probably talked enough given our time, and I want to show the examples of where we've actually done it with customers and how customers are leveraging the application.
Yeah, so here what we'd like to do is we'd like to show you what dynamic remodel actually means. So we're going to do it with 2 case studies. And by the way, these are sanitized versions. We're not going to talk about specific client names or situations, but it gives you a pretty good sense of the scenarios that we've dealt with. So the very first one that we're going to take a look at is a global enterprise customer service software company that had a really next generation, what we would call a bet the farm release. That is, new competitor was coming out, and they really had to get on to the next generation, or they were going to lose their business. Like many software companies, we included, product development folks have a certain hypotheses about what creates value, and it's usually based on what the product actually does as opposed to what it does for customers. Here it's all about having shorter transaction times. So let's just take a look at what the value modeling revealed. And so I'm going to just open up this first one here for our January webinar here and open it up in our value modeling tool. So for the folks who are watching this who haven't seen our application before, there's a lot of functionality here. We're just going to focus on the modeling aspects of it. So the offering here is this game-changing technology for a customer service center, call center type of environment versus green screen. And any of us, or many of us who have been involved in software know what a green screen is. It's sort of an old legacy type of a system. So what's interesting here is that, the initial value proposition, we're going to take a zoom in on the value differentiators here. You'll notice that there isn't much value in here. In fact, there's red in the background. And sort of as a technical note, whenever you see red in a value model, it's not a good thing. It's not where you want to go. It's basically saying that you're taking value away from the customer.
And can I just play out kind of the scenario a little bit? This is a really interesting scenario, right? Product development was seeing these call center users using a green screen.
Right.
And the going-in assumption was that their productivity just can't be that high. They have to enter all these keystrokes in order to create a transaction. So clearly, we can come up with a new user interface that is going to be so much easier to use, and that's going to create huge productivity gains. That was the impetus for this game-changing application. And as you looked across the industry, most call centers had this highly interactive GUI interface that, they weren't having in this industry. So this should be a game changer. And what was interesting was that when they actually spent some time talking to the large call centers where the great profitability was going to be, what they found was that the people using the green screen had been in their roles 15, 20 years.
Right.
They had actually developed great productivity around it.
Right.
And the cost to train those people on a new system was going to be really significant.
Right.
So they called leverage point in when they had the OS moment.
Right.
We're in trouble. How are we going to get out of this? And it was a leverage point solution that allowed them to start to think about a whole set of other value drivers.
Right. So the great productivity gains, and by the way, there are lots of specific features that help develop productivity, still did not outweigh the retraining costs of these veteran call center folks. Looking at what the real impact of such a solution on a call center revealed other drivers in value. And when you start adding these into the model, you'll notice that the picture changes somewhat. So a better way of handling errors, which is a big problem with call centers. New agent training, which especially in a green screen environment, that's really a huge cost. Someone who's been on the system for 10, 15 years, they've made all those hard mistakes, but a new person, especially a younger person, is going to have a hard time with green screens. especially in the age of Facebook. Also, upselling potentials as well. So here we have additional revenue that we're adding. So you notice that this differentiation value picture is starting to look better and better. But really, the most interesting finding in this is this, what we call a hidden gem of a value driver. That is investment in software. When the product was first released, everything was about looking at productivity. It wasn't looking at the other software investments that a call center has to make in order to do these other types of transactions. That's all part of the next generation. That's really the investment decision for the call center manager. That's really where the value story is.
And what was so interesting was it wasn't until they had the application running with them that they were able to get individuals across the internal enterprise together to start to brainstorm about where were their opportunities for value.
Right.
And it was really someone in the sales organization that said, did you know that most of these guys have additional software that's running on their desktops?
Right.
No one knew that before, or no one really understood what that looked like. And it wasn't until they could take this model to some loyal customers and those customers could start to frame out what it looked like, where they could see that there was really this opportunity.
And what's nice about having a value-based approach and be able to model that, you can actually see where the value story is. So it summarizes a whole lot of data and assumptions onto a picture that basically says, whoa, we should be looking at software. It's not just about productivity for this particular customer.
And ultimately what it meant was their going-in position was that the only place where they were really going to be able to penetrate the market was in call centers where they had a lot of new hires coming on board.
Right.
And what they determined was that wasn't where the marketplace necessarily was for them. While that was a rich market segment, it was really across the board, and it was across the board in these very large call centers that had long-term employees involved with it. And the truth is, that's where most of the market share is, and that's where most of the profitability is in this industry.
Okay, so that's our first case study. So let's look at our second case study, and this is a very different situation. It's one that we see a lot. We work a lot with industrial companies, and that is companies that provide materials or materials into OEM companies. Especially over the last couple of years. OEMs are certainly facing a lot of pressure, so they're pushing really heavy back on their suppliers. RFPs, direct competitive bids, I'm sure many in our audience can relate to this particular situation. It is brutal to deal with procurement in some of these very large companies. So what do you do if you have a supplier that you're trying to, let's not talk about value, let's just say holding on to your existing business, what do you do about that? So this extension was basically a material where they added some more efficiency to it. In other words, the play is use less of material, less cost to the end product. That's the value add, and that was sort of the going-in assumption going into this next bid. Looking at our model, again, we realize that we have, so I'm going to exit this particular model and go into our next example. So in this particular example, what we're looking at is, the value play here. Now, this looks initially, quite good. You have a competitive product here. You have some great value here in terms of material costs per end unit of manufacture. A lot of companies would be quite happy with this, but because they've worked with this customer, because they knew their relationship and how the product was used in their production, they were able to tease out additional value drivers just because of their understanding of their operations. What do we mean? It's more than just the material. It's things like quality. That is, if the material performs better, you don't have to revise product during the manufacturing process. So you improve some quality in it, adds a little bit more value. If you lose less material, well, obviously you need to keep less material on hand. Work in process inventory goes down a little bit more value. Waste costs, disposal costs, always a huge issue, especially in the United States, where you have a lot of regulations about sludge and those types of things. Use less material, less disposal costs. That is an impact on there. Warranty costs. Now, this is when you're thinking outside of the factory. What happens after that the end product actually goes out in the field and there's some problem related to your material? There's a cost there that you don't normally look at when you're talking with an OEM. OEMs care a great deal about that. They could be able to make a better value story. And then finally, going further out, weight is a factor to this OEM in terms of its product and its performance. So less material, weight savings gain, performance factor, it allows them to sell their product at a slightly, at a higher margin. So what's nice about this story is that, you could start off with a good value proposition, but you can double the amount of value in an existing product by just thinking more broadly about the impact with customers.
Yeah, and I love this example because ultimately what it meant was the discussion was with procurement when they saw this value. Mm-hmm. They were actually educating procurement on what the real value, the additional value of material costs, and they made it a no-brainer.
Right.
It was very difficult for procurement to choose the competitor when they had this value equation in front of them.
Right. So, value, as much as many of us know, value is going well beyond what your negotiations with procurement. There are other stakeholders in the organization to understand the value story. All right, so those are our two quick examples, and just sort of to wrap up what we've learned from these and what we provide. So, Jay?
Yeah, so I want to be careful with time here, but what we've laid out, I think, is shown how the leverage point application really helps improve the efficiency of the product development process. And when we're talking about improving that, it's about giving better results. Mm-hmm. And it means we're limiting product failures. And I think there's some specific ways that we help around that are high leverage around the product development process. Better understanding of what features and functionalities customers want by segment, allowing you to capture the market share. What we saw in the example of the call center really helped them understand what was the value across different segments. You have large call centers established, folks working there. You had net new call centers with new hires. There's a different value proposition for each. We helped them understand what that looked like. Improving sales effectiveness, lack of marketing ability to get out there. We helped improve sales effectiveness. You could see it in the example of the chemical company. Mm-hmm. Expanded the value proposition, provided the no-brainer for procurement. Mm-hmm. Focus the product development by prioritizing which features are important to the customer. When you think about what we did with the call center example, we helped them understand that it was really about putting more functionality together, replacing a lot of the existing software. That was really the competitive advantage that they needed to go through. Understanding the competition, understanding how you position yourself against the competition. The example of the chemical manufacturer, it was very much about demonstrating how much better we are than the competition. The competition could decrease their price. It still wasn't going to be enough when you had the value proposition put together. And ultimately understanding when you should act in a marketplace. Mm-hmm. With the pressure that product development is under right now, we believe that Leverage Point allows companies to improve the results of the product development process. We help organizations capture the ROI from a new product. We help them be much more accurate in capturing the market share that they project and the profitability that they project. And we believe that's the reason why we're seeing so many customers leverage our application, use the pun, in the product development process, and particularly leverage the content that comes out of our application in the product development process.
All right, so I look and it's a couple minutes past the half hour, but we could stay on for a few minutes and take some of the questions that have come in. So Aaron, did we have any questions?
Yeah, one just came in at the end here.
Yeah.
Have you ever conducted a conjoint analysis on a significant new product and compared the premium price indicated by the conjoint to a value-based pricing model?
The quick answer to that is no, we haven't done that.
Our application supports value-based pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Conjoint analysis is something that would be done by a consulting group, and we can have a whole conversation about what is the significance of conjoint analysis. In B2B markets, we find that understanding economic value, being able to communicate economic value, having a value-based price allows you to capture in the marketplace more profitability than a conjoint analysis that talks to a customer not when they're making a buying decision, but when they're considering functionality, and they're making trade-offs not against economic trade-offs, but against use trade-offs, which are very different. In a B2B transaction, there is a negotiation going on. There is a business trade-off going on. And what is selected in conjoint analysis does not necessarily apply to what procurement has when they're negotiating with you face-to-face. And having sat across the table from a lot of procurement officers in my life, very few times have I felt like the conjoint analysis supported me in that negotiation.
Yeah, one more question.
Yep.
A lot of companies use value modeling in Stagegate, and one place that they struggle is the gatekeepers don't understand value and pricing. How do you help the gatekeepers?
That's a fantastic question.
Yeah, it is a great question.
And you know, part of our application has an educational component to it. So we're really helping, if someone builds a value model, helping educate them on what are the different elements of the value model. So that's one of the key ingredients. But the second piece is, by actually having this in a collaborative platform, right, where you can have a number of individuals in the organization involved in using the application, it allows people internally to educate each other about what they mean. And I think you have a great example of a CMO who was.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, I was about just to say about collaboration, because our product is designed to support that type of collaboration. But the example that, you know, because I was looking at you thinking, what example is he talking about? But yeah, with one of our clients, a chief marketing officer had a group of product developers that were showing some of their plans, and there were four groups, and very quickly went through each of the teams' value propositions for their new products. And what was great about it, because you had it on a consistent basis, a consistent format, all the assumptions were there. It was very, very clear exactly where the value was or where it wasn't. It was very hard to use smoke and mirrors with this application, and very quickly was able to tell which of the cases were really thought out and solid and which ones needed more work and validation. That type of discussion can happen in minutes, whereas, you know, at least in some of my experiences looking at some Stagegate processes where there's a review, where a reviewer may have a slide deck of hundreds of slides, they can't do the due diligence around that. So what we do is we make it very, very transparent and very, very easy to look underneath the covers of value. Great question, though. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, well, I think we have used up more than enough of our time. I'd like to thank everyone today for joining us. We'll be doing these on a monthly basis, so look forward to having you join us again. Again, we will have a recording of this webinar on our website probably in the next week. So thanks again.
And just for all of you, we'd love to hear your feedback on how this webinar went. We're showing our application, and we want to understand better ways to show it. So if you have any feedback around that specifically, we'd be glad to get it from you all. So again, thank you very much for taking your time to spend a little time with us today.